There's a kind of fear that doesn't make a sound. It hides in the pauses between words, in the seconds before you answer, in the moment right after the music stops and the air seems to get heavier. It's the fear of silence. And for those who feel it, the emptiness between one sound and the next is louder than any scream. These people can't stand the sound of nothing. They need voices, noise, notifications, stories looping endlessly, anything to keep the echo inside from becoming audible. Because for them, silence is a mirror. And not everyone can bear to face what's reflected there. In psychology, the fear of silence has less to do with the environment and more to do with the mind. It's not the absence of sound, it's the loss of control. Silence removes the script. It takes away the background music of the performance we put on to exist in the world. And without it, the performing self collapses. That's why some people fill their home with noise, their day with tasks, their life with distraction, as if silence were an animal that, if not kept busy, would bite. Neuroscience shows that silence, paradoxically, activates the same alert circuits as fear. When the brain lacks external stimuli, it turns inward and finds chaos, repressed memories, vague sensations, baseline anxiety. It's the so-called default mode network, the brain's resting state, where the mind listens to itself. But for someone carrying unresolved wounds, this rest becomes a threat. The body links quiet with danger, because in the past, silence came before trauma. The pause before the scream, the emptiness after the loss, the stillness of a room after a fight. Silence becomes a trigger, and the mind learns to run. But something deeper is happening. Behind the fear of silence is a desperate need to feel present. These people aren't afraid of the sound that's missing. They're usually afraid they don't exist without it. They confuse noise with confirmation. As long as there are voices, there are witnesses. And as long as there are witnesses, there is identity. When everything goes quiet, the self unravels a little. And the void threatens to swallow what's left. So the fear of silence is, at its core, the fear of the self. Of meeting yourself without filters, without distractions, without a character to play. Of hearing the echo of your own loneliness. Of realizing that the mind speaks, and speaks a lot, when the world goes quiet. It is a kind of emotional hypervigilance. A state where a person needs to monitor the environment, the conversation, the sound, the time. Because silence is unpredictable, and the unpredictable awakens the primal fear of losing control. But this is where everything flips. Because what looks like weakness, the inability to endure silence, is also a refined sensitivity. People who fear silence pick up on nuances others overlook. The shift in someone's tone, the pause that carries something unspoken, the air that gets heavier when something is off. These are people who hear the world in high definition. The pain isn't from a lack of strength, it is from a lack of filters. Silence hurts, but it's also a signal. The body asking to be heard. Many of these fears start early. A child who grew up in homes full of noise and tension learned that silence meant danger. When everything got quiet, something bad was coming. Others lived the opposite. Silence as indifference. Absent parents, distant affection, the lack of voice as the lack of love. And the young brain, starved for sound and care, linked noise with safety. In adulthood, that association remains, invisible, but dominant. So the adult talks too much, thinks too much, listens to music until they fall asleep. It's not a sound addiction, it's a survival mechanism. Therapy calls this a gradual exposure to silence, a practice of relearning how to exist in your own presence. 5 minutes a day without music, without screens, just breathing. The body will tremble, the mind will scream. But little by little, the nervous system learns. Silence isn't the enemy. It's neutral ground. A space where fear can turn into listening. Mindfulness and grounding techniques help reprogram this response. When you focus on the sensation of air entering and exiting, silence shifts in texture. It stops being a hostile void and becomes a space to inhabit. It's like replacing a cage with a home. The same space, but with light. Over time, silence stops being a distorted mirror and becomes a window. You start to hear not the noise of the mind, but the subtle sounds of life. The beat of your own heart, the wind brushing the curtains, the world breathing. It's the same silence, but now it feels safe. Philosophically, silence might be the most human thing there is, because it reminds us that we are the pauses between sounds, the intervals between stories. Silence is the soil where consciousness grows. Without it, all we have is performance. With it, we have presence. Those who fear silence are, in truth, the ones who need it most. Because in them, sound became both shield and search. They're not running from life, they're trying to feel it safely. And when they learn to stay quiet without falling apart, they discover something rare. Silence isn't emptiness, it's substance. Inside it lies a voice, calm, ancient, loving, that was always there, waiting to be heard. And then, for the first time, silence stops being an echo and becomes an embrace, a place to return to, a home without noise, and the fear dissolves into the sound of nothing.